Okay, so we're going to begin with our back to the blocks and the blanket. And I have a mid-sized towel that's at the very back of that height for my neck. These are all going to be optional. You might find that as you kind of cruise into this chest, shoulder, hipsa is really what I'm going to call this one. I worked on it yesterday, and this will be a little bit lengthier than what I did yesterday to add some leg strength work and balance. But for the moment here, we're going to start with lying back on the blanket and blocks. And as I lower down, I want to situate myself so that my thighs aren't going to give me any fuss in my spine. So I want them to be supported and lifted. Now I've tried this with turning the bolster higher up on a different level. I've tried it without the blanket in front. So I've given them all a try, and I came around to what was taught in the beginning, that I guess I need this under my calves to feel comfortable in my back. But you might find something different about yourself in this beginning set, especially how your spine responds to strengthening, okay? So you can tell this is quite a big reach for my ribs, and I'm suspending the position I'm going to keep in this for some endurance in my stretch of my breathing muscles. So my belly is certainly a relaxed pool above my legs, right? So this is a contour, kind of like a flowing river, right? As far as the sequencing of the bones. And then start to move your arms to get a belt. And I want you to first have that sand set fairly high up on the ribs. So feel what works for you, whether it's where they're arching or where they're at a little more of a plateau. It depends on the comfort of your chest, doesn't it? So I have to kind of squirm around a little bit to feel my back supported here, kind of work your ribs until you can center. And then as I hold on and reach overhead with my hands and the belt, I'm going to actually create a resistance with the hold of my belt and feel resistance in my upper arms. So I'm kind of in limbo here as far as my progression of the reach. I'm going to stay where I can feel my shoulders activate. I can feel a little bit of stiffness with my breathing when I inhale because of the restrictions. And encourage your next inhale to fill up your upper lungs. And then keep the arms moving back overhead. Feel resistance. Feel the elbows bending so they're in almost a cactus pose. And going to the level that you feel even in your arms. And that might not be possible for some, depending on the shoulder history. But I want to encourage you to have the same amount of muscular strength around your shoulders, around the back of the shoulders, weaving into the blades. So notice the simplicity of the discipline of moving the arms back. And then slide your hands out wide on the belt. Be quite generous with the opening of the chest muscles, the pecs. And feel the breath gradually expand as you hold the belt. So once you slide your hands out, likely the expansion happens. However, it's difficult to back off and bring your hands closer in once you've allowed them to slide out. So dedicating a few moments here to this really strong mixture of chest and shoulder openings and the strength in the spinal column. Okay, relax your grip on the belt. Feel if you still muscle through this. You'll let your arms relax on the ground. And likely they are able to expand out even greater due to the fact that you use the belt prior to lowering them down. So we'll assume that is so. So let's move our shoulders to feel them rolling back and down in towards the props. Feel an inhale, filling up. And then with the exhale out of your mouth, empty your lungs. And start to center into this practice. So some of the sequencing today requires a bit of processing time, kind of absorbing the circulation from the posture. So if you get a little fidgety or feel uncomfortable with the circulation idea I'm working with, you can always shift, move into a different phase with similarities to what I'm working with. Scan the back of the legs, feeling from your calves to the thighs, and then feeling how the weight of the pelvis sinks conveniently between the bulky props. It's almost as if you have that bulk of your center of gravity purposely there. And then feeling the belly, the abdomen expand and relax back towards the floor. Feel if you can assess the breath moving in the nose and lightly out through the mouth. We'll take a few more moments here. If at any time you find that moving the legs, sampling, stepping onto the blanket in front, you might feel that's a little easier in your spine. So that blanket roll can come in handy. Key influence is to open up that upper respiratory tree. The bronchial tubes, the lungs, the throat. And now feel the change from the legs lingering and resting to the feet on the blanket. If you haven't found that design yet, feel that design. And then we'll move the sand off the ribs. And we'll attach our arms close to the sides of the mat. Attach our arms. Keep them attached in. Feel the shoulders work their way back towards the blocks and blanket. Remember, this is a very intense actual prop under your back, right? It's like a brick. So feeling how you can balance the ribs open, and then we'll let those spaces flutter a bit. So we'll take it real simple as we roll to the side. So instead of putting my feet on my bolster, and that could be a little harsh on my neck, I'm going to roll to the side, any side will do, and move my towel away and my blanket and my blocks from underneath my back, and place simply a blanket at the back. Move my blanket at the front over to the side yard and push the bolster just a tad forward as you lower back down. Now you've got this kind of fluffy ribs that you can work with. Okay, so we'll take a block center of the knees and we'll place a block to the side of a hip. Any hip will do. Bring your knees to your chest and maintain that distance of the legs, leg distancing. Okay, so as I move my knees as close in towards my chest, reasonably so with this block centered, I'm going to reach my arms overhead. Okay, if you want some extra padding under your head, you can add your towel. Remember, this is an option now. And as I lower my feet to the bolster, I'm going to push into the feet and lift up about halfway of my full pelvic tilt. So it's almost as if I have to refrain from pushing further into my glutes. So I lift up and then lower the spine. Feel almost the curl of the back of the pelvis swoop down. Belly full. Exhale, belly squeezes in as you bring your knees towards the chest. Keeping the arms either straight back or out to the sides, depending on your shoulders' comfort. 2 more times. Feet to the bolster. Pushing down, lifting up your hips. Okay, this time I'm lifting up a little bit higher because I can't resist but to do so. It was natural. And as I lengthen down my spine, ease the back material. And then as I lower the spine down all the way, belly full, inhale. Try to get that dome of the belly to rise. And then exhale, squeeze the knees in and the spine, resting. Reach for your block. Move both arms down by the sides. And we'll take the block, place them both by the sides of the legs, feet together, knees out. Setting, the block setting could be in a contour, and it might also feel comfortable for you to place the blocks fairly high on the sides of the leg so that it creates this basin for the feet. It feels almost like you are creating a bowl in the leg so that the breath can move a little easier in the pelvis down from the abdominal breath. Okay, so let's take the right arm across the chest and reach for the right elbow with our left hand and press down. Actually, I'm reaching my arm across as I'm feeling the connective tissue in that right shoulder gradually stretching. Yeah, the right hand might activate. Let the fingers relax. Let your brain be wherever it's comfortable. Maybe turning it center is too much. Maybe you have to turn with the arm that's moving. Yeah. Ideally, focus into your right deltoid. Now as you come back center, left arm reaches under the right, intertwine the arms into an arm twist, and feel the elbows just simply centered over the heart. Feet relaxed together. Feel the elbows moving towards the belly. Now feeling the hands cross over towards the shoulders. Slide the hands to hold the elbows and reach them overhead. Elbow crisscross. So I have a hold of my elbows and they're overhead for a few moments. Okay, and feeling the belly motion. Slide the hands aside, left arm crosses in front of the chest, up into the collarbones, right hand to left elbow, and feeling that you're creating that continuation of awareness in your left shoulder. So maintain that simplicity. It could feel different on your second deltoid here. So instead of trying to pry the ligaments back and forth to get more sensation, accepting where you have the same level of pressure and alignment, just noticing the differences. One side, it could be other things. It might be your head turned easier one side than the other. Reach the right arm behind the left arm and intertwine the arms. We are trying to find that circulation through the bicep and the fold at the elbow. Yeah, and I find this is important for my wrist circulation. So trying to work with this one where it feels reasonably comfortable for your arms. So I'm trying to move my arms so that they're reaching down towards my heart versus pushing them back over, downwards. Feel the hands cross over the chest and slide them to the elbows, and feeling where your hands hold your elbows and moving them back overhead. You know, maintain this simple focus in the arms and feel if you can bring the knees to float up. And obviously we'll have feet on the bolster so they don't have to float anywhere else. Feel your feet to the bolster and see if you can push down into them. Now, if the surface pressure is mostly your heels and no other part of your foot, I'll encourage you to reach your heels to the other side of the bolster and pull it in a little closer. And as we release the grasp on our elbows, reach your hands down to the bolster and be sure you can just faintly touch it. That's a good distancing here. Okay. So we're warming up into the hip flexors a little deeper. So let's try it with pushing into our feet, lifting our hips up. Now, noticeably, my knees will tend to kind of spring a little forward on this position. So my work right now is to mildly pigeon toe the feet. We certainly don't want to go the other direction with them whatsoever on any of these back bends, right? We want to protect the SI joint. So if I was to turn my feet out any way, shape, or form, it's going to narrow the sacroiliac. And we want that space to have more stability, right? Not mobility. So as I lower down my spine, how about you lower down your spine? And this time as we push and lift up, bring your arms overhead, stretch them straight back behind you. Feel that fundamental reach through the arms. And now as you lower down the spine, see if you can manage the circulation as if you're expected to continue this cycle of respiration as well as activation of your leg muscles. So if doing this requires you to have a block between the knees so that you maintain the strength in your glutes, you could add that. Sometimes it's nice to go without and see what you have kind of on a solo level without a lot of extra props. You've got the bolster under you, and that certainly supports the lengthening through the spine. And we're starting with spine focus here. Strengthening the spine to begin and now lengthening. So last time when you lower down, we'll take a belt and we'll place it under our right foot. And as the belt is unbuckled, so you've got full length, let's hold on to the belt with the right hand and move the left knee out. So you probably still have the block nearby. You might place that. You might need the block. I'm actually putting it up on my bolster a little bit. So my knee is, my thigh muscles are very comfortable. And there's not a lot of strain here on my knee joint or even the stretch in the leg. And the right leg moves way out. So you're trying to move that leg outwards towards 2 o'clock, maybe a little farther. That's probably enough with your elbow on the floor. And feel the left arm stretch back besides your head and maintain a focus of pulling with that right hand to balance the energy of strength and flexibility. Breathing slow, 4 counts in, belly full, 5 counts out. Now allow yourself to get into the groove of an actual shape where you're processing, where you give yourself a little time to notice the good and the bad of the pose and how you can find a summary of balance between the two. Now you're witness to the sensation of the adductor, I'm assuming. You feel the inner thigh stretch on the right leg. Maybe both. Now as you pull with your hand, the right hand, bring the leg back center, and as I move the block aside, I'm going to keep my left leg there, but I'm going to stretch it down on the bolster so my knee is reaching forwards. And then take the belt into my left hand, swap hands, and cross the leg to the left. Now, so all that inner thigh attempt that you worked is now kind of wrapping around. You know, that connective tissue is like this cellophane wrapper, and you're trying to kind of press it down and then stretch the seam and feel a little bit of gliding right into the fascia here, the connective tissue. You might place your right hand onto your outer thigh, close to your hip attachment. And now try to keep that resistance with the right foot in the belt, like you're trying to push into the belt. Once you've found that maximum range of motion through the hip, feel the right knee bending. Okay, feel before you start to push the position to the leg straight up. I want you to stay with this right hip fired, so you're still activating this hip. Okay, now as I move my right knee towards my face, so it's going towards my face, I'm going to slide my left foot up on the bolster and then hook that right ankle to the left knee. And you don't have to keep the belt a hold. I'm sure there could be something fancy to do with this, but I don't find anything creative in the moment. So I'll hold behind the left thigh and go with the science of the practice, where I move a little deeper into that right hip. And the value of this is to find the balance of stretching your lower back. Right, so we've gone external, internal for the hip, and now line it up to the back. So the left leg could pretty much be limp at the foot, doesn't have to be lifting. Relax the left foot. And stay with the energy, the body of the pose. This is a good reclining pigeon pose. You can hold below the left knee or behind the left thigh. Now they're different. They feel a little more intense here under the knee. However, if your knee is injured, it's probably not a good idea. Or you got an owie on your knee. Won't want to push into it. Or thigh, either way. So rock a little bit side to side. Find some motion. Rocking is therapeutic, especially in a hip here. Now when we switch the side, now you get a feel here for shifting. And so we were working really with that right leg in that rotation. So now, interestingly enough, right, this right leg is externally rotated to finish up. So when I move that leg down on the bolster, I just had it set up like that in the air, right, where I was holding. So now I put my block back on my bolster under my right knee. Okay, take my belt, lift it up, place it under my left foot, hold my belt on my left foot, and then move the left leg out. Personally, on this side, I feel like I'm going to kind of fall over into the left side. So I'll use my right arm to give me some kind of leverage my balance. I suppose I could probably use a sandbag on my right arm so I don't fall all the way back over to the left, but you could use your discipline here of feeling the back body rest into the floor. Yeah. I think part of this can also be if you have a weaker, leg injury, anything with that, it can really come up in a sequence like this. Like, I don't hold my balance the same on the second side. So try to give it the same rules, the same outline. That's really important. So I'm considering what's going on here. Like, my flexibility is a tiny bit different. Notice if yours is feeling different. Try to stay with the back of the pelvis centered on the floor. Really important. Don't let it peel up. That's where a sandbag could go right on my right hip, huh? Now as you bend through that left knee, let the right leg stretch down on the bolster. Relief. Right hand holds the belt and swap hands, swap control in the thighs. And feeling that reality of crossover. Now this will likely help us find some balancing in the roots of the joints. It's an interesting sequence, kind of shaping now where we have kind of light pressure points, tensions. So when you push into your belt with the left foot, see if you can feel the leg move downstream. Feel where you're caught in a kind of a wrath of gripping. So you might move the leg a little bit as long as your left knee is in a micro bend. So you're not hyperextending the knee joint. You could do little movements. You could bend your knee and push it back over to the right. As long as it's not a big popping sensation. We can't hear it if it's got sound, but be a little wary of creating continuous popping. And then as you bend through your left knee, you continue on this hip. Just take it slow. Knee is out. Right foot slides on the bolster, left foot hooks to the right knee. Belt away and hold the back of the right thigh and squeeze. Get a nice disciplined focus of drawing the knee in. Now, of course, you've got to find focus on the knee that is being pushed around, right, with this left external rotation. So, if you've got something going on with that knee and you need to mellow it out, the knee pressure, you can lower your foot to your bolster and let that knee stretch open this way. Okay, so if you've got anything on the inner knee, meniscus, anything in here that hurts when you pull here, then stay with this and use a block and use that block so it's higher up on the inner thigh versus towards the knee. So you can work on this rotation. They're both satisfying, I find, but if my knee doesn't feel good with it, I'm here. Okay, feel where the spine is supported. Breathing only helps. You always have that. You always have that to do, huh? You always have some breathing to do. Just noticing where it's moving in the body. If it's always back at the belly in a yoga practice, feel when you take a deep breath. Notice if you take deep breath with your mouth, if that seems to be a tendency when it's kind of overwhelming, and see if you can bring it into the nose and out of the mouth. And now I'm going to shift this pose and come into a Viparita Karani. So that's going to be I uncross, push into my bolster with my feet, lift up the hips into bridge pose. Be rather shifty in your hippie here. You're really trying to push down into your feet to lift your hips. You're at maximum volume in the pelvis, but also the thoracic kind of runs down in towards the armpits. Okay, so I'm going to slide the block under the back of the pelvis. I'm going to go to the second height. You can go to the first or the second, depends on how comfortable this is in your hips. And then as you lower down and center, you lift up your feet, maybe one or both at the same time, and then feel your toes relaxed and feel from the core band of the pelvis. So if am I touching to my belly, and I can feel the resistance, and it's kind of ribbed and actually activated so much in the lower port of the abdomen. Kind of nice to feel it inverted because when it's not inverted, it drops, right? So this is the opposite of prolapse. So be upside down as often. I'm going to try to go back to relaxing my toes there and then focus on moving from the legs up. Again, if the block feels too high, you just put your feet back on the bolster and lower it down. Okay, so my block is pretty high up right now. That feels better on my lower back, but it is a little shakier in my legs. They're a little challenged here. So feel where there's this hinge. This is a back bend, right? As much as it's an inversion. It's a leg stretch as well. So maintain a few moments here where the legs are in ascension, right? You got helium toes here. It's just vertical. It's so pure and important here to keep the balance. Arms could be down. I like this version sometimes. I can roll my shoulders down and in and be sure my neck is centered and puff open the chest. Some prefer arms out to cactus. That feels nice as well for my chest circulation. So there are variations, different focus points. And resting the brain stem. And we're going to do this pose twice today. We're going to have one when we're at a wall, so the relaxation is superior. This one requires some core strength without sand. So circle your feet. Let your feet be a few moments where they're not being stepped on. They don't have sand on them. They're not being stepped into. Your habits of alignment are not part of your experience right now. You're doing a certain discipline of sequencing to support posture. And as the feet are simply resting, feel the tingling. Give your body a little more time to let the actual blood move from the extremities back to the vital organs to calm the nervous system. So feel the belly fill. The only thing you can really lift up right now besides the legs is the belly with your strength. And feel the belly completely release down. Bend your knees. And then from balance, I move my knees a little forward so they're at a right angle. And this is a challenge in my back mobility. So I'm going to try to keep it 1 foot at a time down to the bolster. Notice what's interesting for you with balance. Push down to the feet, lift up the hips. Try to go slow with that hip lift. And then as I slide the block aside, I'll lower down the spine carefully. As soon as the spinal cord is releasing, you're going to windshield wiper the legs, not just the knees and the feet, but actually feel the legs. So I'll push my bolster forward a little bit. So my knees are comfortable with this. I don't want to jam them up closer to my center. I want to let the legs reach. And I like to play with this a little bit where I swing a leg out. I have 1 foot on the bolster, the other leg swings, right? This is a warm-up that you sometimes will do for modern dance, right? When you're on your back and you windshield wiper and then let a leg swing. So the leg swing, I like to take this one from that practice because that hip can actually reach out of the back. Okay, so we'll use that as a focal point. Bring the feet to the bolster side and push it over to the right side of your mat. Take a little bit of a roll over to that bolster and put a blanket on top of it on the right side of your mat. Okay? So you got a nice amount of height. Okay, right leg is straightish, left leg crosses to the bolster blanket. So I'm going to push out my props over on that right side till I feel like, oh, this is able to conveniently respond to the prop. So I'm trying to feel the line of energy from my right side of my waist down into my foot, and then add a sandbag to the left outer thigh, or purely on the hip. If you decide you want to stay with it across, it feels nice on your back. This is a brilliant way to go. Sometimes this feels pretty nice for my back. Not so much on my hip, even though it's on my hip, yes it is, but I actually feel it addressing my back. Now if I put it on my thigh, and I push my bolster a little farther away, I get a little more on my hip. Now you certainly might not want the blanket on top of the bolster. I'm adding that for comfort. Because I like to come away from this experience feeling some spaciousness, not like I cranked away at my joints and they're going to be sore. So work with this this back piece, right? We have been using a ball there and so forth, and somehow that rolled away from my plan here. I don't know how I forgot it, but you could use a block. It's interesting how just something there supports you. It's quite interesting. Something there supports me. And you might even bend your right knee, as if you're moving your foot towards your buttock. You can play with that. Arms spread open, T-shape, head turns left or center, wherever you're comfortable. Close the eyes. Feel the presence of the awareness in your hip, in your core, and your spine. Just feeling where the movement of the breath if the breath kind of rotates between the sides of the core, or if it feels like it flushes down to the belly, feeling the proper motion for diaphragmatic breathing, feeling as if it sweeps down, filling the belly. And as you exhale, it actually moves up towards the heart. It opens the heart. Yeah, you might fidget your lower leg a little bit on this, and or the upper or your arms. Now polish this one, trying to feel the ends of the pose. Scanning the weight in the right hip, feeling the awareness in the left hip, as if you're trying to wag your tail on that left side. So you're trying to feel your left hip move away from your heart. Okay, for a few more seconds here. And feeling how you would want to move out of this one. Maybe you want to move your block if you had that there first, sand second. And as I move my knees into the chest, I'm going to bring a sandbag actually to the back of my legs. If you have a bag of weight, it's helpful. You can find this idea with rice. Sometimes you have those little ankle weights that you kind of with Velcro you put around. You can use those. There's lots of things that you can use for weight for helping you stretch. Okay. So I'm going to stay in limbo with this one right in the center, and then see if I can get my bolster. It's a pretty good amount of weight to drop over. So notice if you can do that. You don't have to keep your blanket on top. It's simply adding some extra height to support my lower back. Okay, so it's an option. Okay. So feel that reverse stretch in the back of the leg. See if you can lift up the feet and feeling the sensation at the legs and the back, maybe mostly the back for some of us. So right hip is the next focus. So I move my sand, I cross the right leg over to the left bolster, and then put my sand on my outer right thigh. Yeah. Play with the direction of the kind of your flapping limbs, right? You've got your arms, they can have some animation with this one to start. Feel the reach of the thigh muscles. And you can almost be a little ambitious on this one where you kind of like try to lift your leg and cross it as far as you can, and then you try to even out your ribs, and it's too much. So you might end up sliding back into reality. Okay, what is that right now? I'm not sure. So my left hip is kind of leaning into itself right now. I'm almost into my left hip. I'm certainly not flat on my back right now, but I am trying to get my upper back on the floor, my right shoulder. So if you can't get your right shoulder or the back of the shoulder to the floor, I'm going to encourage you to bend your left knee a bit, the leg closest to the bolster base, and see if that creates some ease in your shoulder. It all matters, right? Every little piece matters. They're all pretty important when you summarize this practice. So I'm going to move the sand closer to my knee. That feels like a very full hip stretch. So feeling your head turn to the right, perhaps, feel the chest open. Breathe simple. Be a little random with your arm placement. Maybe you have a hand on your belly, feeling the breath. Maybe you have a hand on the sand. Maybe you're pushing around the blanket under your head till it's just a little bit better. And then align your mental kind of tune up here with the breath and maybe the sensations of breath. Yeah, I hope this feels like it's helpful for your hip, this position. Helpful for your lower back, as well as the hip and buttock muscles. If there's any sensations that are like squeezing, see if you can exhale out fully. We're going to keep this busy focus on our core down into our legs and get as full of a reach through the legs as we can now. So let's start to slide any of our props that are attached to us. If you ended up with a block to your back, move that away. If that didn't come to mind, then okay, you're going to move your sand away. You probably will find that using your hand to move it is the best choice for your hip. Okay. It's pretty vulnerable here. So when we move out, what we're going to do is take a very simple change, okay? We're going to roll to the side. And we'll come up, and instead of knees to chest from our back, with our knees to chest when we're on our back, we're going to put our knees to chest when we're on all fours. So push your bolster forward. Place your blanket under your knees. Okay, we'll go right into it. We'll take the other props in a few moments, but first things first here. I've got my hands forward on my bolster. It's a pretty ambitious reach. And I'm going to lower down. Now, if my neck feels a little challenged here, what I could do is take a blanket or a towel or a block and place it under my forehead. Okay, so I have that support. But feel the back reach. So my knees could go closer. This feels better on my back, knees in. But notice this is similar to if you were on your back, but it's a long stretch for your back. Okay, let the forehead really get a feel that it's down. Now, as you start to slide your hands to the floor, whatever your prop setup is, just let it be wherever it's under your head. And move into a curling cat shape, chin to chest, toes under, fingers wide, inhale, arch the spine. Feel if you can alternate that rounding through the back. So motion of the spine and the breath. Okay, and let's let this kind of liquefy for a few. So you're really working on that formation of motion in the back, lifting up through the mid-back, chin to chest. Feel the natural arching through the spine. So you feel the hips reach, but it's a pretty delicate balance in my back. It's not too crazy and chaotic in my spine. It's manageable. It's back management. Okay. All right, now with the toes under, if I have any props here that are kind of in my path, I'm going to make a little space for my core to move. So I'm going to lift up my heart forward and stretch down my thighs. The toes relax back. Lift up the chest and the gaze. Stretch your eyes up. Okay, now as you Sweep your hips back. Use the bulk of the weight of your seat to reach back. Lower your forehead down. Fingers out wide, hands wide on the mat. And then round your back, chin to chest, and come forwards. Lift up the chest, alternating up dog and child's pose. So we're moving all the way back. If your knees feel too bulky on the blanket, you can always move it to the lower. Undulating action through the spine, and let's hope the shoulders. Okay, now last draw of that movement. Feel the spine lifting, feel the arms reaching, the hips back. Walk your hands to the top left corner of your space. Try to reach over to about 10 or 11 o'clock on the left side. And walk over to the right. Now, if this is a little enduring on your knee pressure-wise, of course you can take a down dog. You can lower down onto the floor, take a little breather. Now, so you could feel the difference in your arms here. I suppose not the arms, but your chest. Not about the arms, it's what they're connected to in the center. So when I move back to center, I'm going to take 2 blocks forward under hands and take a step forward with the right foot, lift up the back knee and press back into the left heel in air or towards floor. You choose. So if I move my right knee above the ankle, it's a fairly strength building shape in my legs. And if I move my hips back, then I can elongate my spine a little bit more. So just noticing here, my sensation in my legs. Let that be the priority here, is the feeling of expansiveness in the legs. Really feeling that reach, especially the back leg. Okay, we're gonna take a twist here. So you can let the right knee stay in a bend. You can try to straighten it. Okay, ideally we try to straighten the right leg. My left hand is on a block forward from my left foot. So it's in the same track of my back foot. So same track, okay? And then as you turn to your right, you're going to reach the right arm up, turning to the right side, right arm lifts, and trying to lengthen the front leg a little bit. It has a little micro bend probably, but see if you can use that core strength into that right hip. Feeling pretty intense stretch here through my leg, up into my hip. Sweep the right arm back and down. And let's step the left foot, the big toe on the left foot, to the inside of the right heel. So I'm stepping forward. So my foot balance, if you can see, is my right foot front, my left foot to the inside of the right heel, okay? And I'm putting my blocks on my bolster because it's enough already. So working into your leg stretch. Feel the connection of the legs lengthening, okay? Try to reach your ribs forwards. You're relying on both the leg strength here and your balance together. Step the feet together. Center them a little bit farther apart so they're about hips distance. Take a forward bend. Obviously we're already there, huh? Forward bend, but hinge at your hips and lower down. Now you could move the blocks so your elbows could be on them if that works for your flexibility. If it doesn't, I would recommend to hold onto your elbows. This is what I prefer in general, out of the two, and lower your head towards the floor. Traction interaction in the spine and the neck. Let your head relax. Now feeling the knees bending, hands to the blocks. If they're up high, I want you to center the blocks down so they're on a stable surface, right, versus a bolster. So the blocks are on their highest height. And I'm going to step the right big toe to the inside of the left heel and give this a few moments here. Okay, so we're kind of ripening up into the calves. Yeah, your hips are probably a little tilted here. So I'm trying to work my waist down, right? So if I want to reach forward, I could try reaching to the bolster or put the blocks on top of the bolster. And keep in mind, it's not as stable as the floor, but it's surely higher than the floor. Step the right foot back. Okay, reach back into that lunge. Stay with the left knee bending. Feel the right thigh reaching. Okay, and balance into that right calf. So get a feel that you're reaching back to that right heel. Doesn't need to be on the floor. Well, mine isn't necessarily getting to the floor on its own. So I've accepted that range, but I feel it. I can really feel my calf. Then I've just got more to look forward to, I guess. Okay, the back leg is lengthening. It's pretty straight. Can't get straighter than this. Okay. My left leg, however, I'm going to try to push that back too and lengthen the left leg. Okay, right hand onto the block. Block is high. The block is in the same lane or plank as my right foot. Not true. So I'm going to move my right foot out wider. I'd rather have a wider base than a more narrow base for balance, always, right? So try to widen out your stance and then turn to your left, cautious here, turn, feel your roots, feel the feet, feel the support under your right hand, turn the waist, left arm stretches up, breathing. Keep the lines of energy pretty fresh through the back leg. Swing the left arm, sweep it back and down to the block. And now we're going to turn to your right. So you're going to take your blocks both on the inside of the left foot. Turn to your right so you're in a wide pyramid pose, right? Wide stance. Feet are parallel to the sides of your mat, okay? Take your blocks forward, reaching, and keep reaching as your chest stretches and your head is centered. Okay, let your head nod side to side. Try to feel that full reach, drinking giraffe. So I'm reaching, my hips are moving back. So give this a few more seconds here. So it's like a downward dog, a wide downward dog, so it's an inversion, right? And this is a little bit more of an inversion than that downward facing dog because there's potential that your head could really be below your heart. So you might move your blocks in, you might reach your hands for your legs, so the very externals. And from internal to external, your hands hold the very sides of the lower bones of the legs and head down, crown down. Okay, now bending your knees. Take a reach for your blocks. A little bit of knee side to side, not a very strict lunge, meaning our knee is not going to go far over the toes. I want you just going to feel this side to side like you're moving your hips. Okay? You're doing a little bit of slider work. But try to move your hips. Let the hips be what moves open to stretch the inner thigh. So when I move my weight to my left foot, I'm actually trying to move my hip out. And then move my hip over to the other side. Okay? So feel that for a few more seconds. Trying to stretch your inner thigh. And then as we move our blocks back to the left foot, so we're turning back towards the bolster, turn the left foot forward, and then pivot that back foot, heel up, lower the right knee, and let's walk our left foot over to the right. Okay, so some of you are going to go into a pigeon pose, okay, and some of you may decide not to. So I'll give the version of pigeon here first. Those of you that aren't going to do pigeon, be here and step your knee, bring your knee back to the blanket. So those of us in pigeon are going right into here, but I'm going to have to push my seat back on my blanket and then take the bolster and lean forward, okay? Those of us going into a sleeping, actually a sleeping twist pose, so a sage twist pose, we'll go from the lunge and then bring the knee back, and then we'll bring our weight into our left hip, and we'll put the bolster down. You might want to add a blanket under it or on top of it. I like it like this, so that I have my blanket like so, and then I can relax into it. Yeah, so it has a similar potential for your stretching your waist, but one's dominant in the hip and one's dominant in the core line and the deep of the back of the waist. So feel the weight of your upper body sink down. Something they both share is the prone position, right? It's a prone pose facing downwards, heart resting. You can always add sand if you feel like you want to try to adjust that onto your right hip or your left inner thigh. If you're in a sleeping sage twist. And if you're in the pigeon variation, I think we'll be 50-50 on this with the group, I have a sense. If you're in the left knee open category, you could work with a twist too, right? You could place your bolster across your right elbow on the bolster and feel a bit of a twist towards the left. You could also keep your elbows on the bolster or your forehead on the bolster. Take a few more moments dedicating the weight moving down and towards the front. You know, depending on your organization with your bolster, we're going to all meet in side sage. So if you're prone this way or you're positioned with your blanket under your leg, we'll meet so that the left hip is on the blanket. Okay. And we'll take our bolster across horizontal next to the left thigh, and then add a block flat and a blanket on top, pushed out so my arm can be right in between. Okay, so my left arm is crossed between the bolster and the block blanket. I'm trying to think of a name for those two together. So as your right arm weaves, I like a sandbag on this one. Yeah, I think that feels very nice, even if it's across my ribs. this way. I prefer it this way. If you have a sandbag assistance, you can get some help with that. Okay, yeah, it kind of slides to the, almost to falling off. Okay, all right, the right knee might need something on the inside. So if you're feeling like that is a little discomfort in your knee, put a block on the inside or the towel. And feeling, you can also bring that leg back and so it's in the air to prevent that pressure of it pushing down. Yeah, feeling the suspension of that right arm. Breathing. You really work to this final segment where there's places in the body where there's a little bit of residue that you're trying to kind of move out. That doesn't mean you have to go full out with your stretch, right? So if this feels a little vulnerable in your shoulder, put the arm onto your side. This feels pretty comfortable. Or down onto the bolster. This is smart for my shoulder, giving it a little stretch, but it's comfortable. It's okay to be comfortable. I think I'm still trying to figure that one out. Now, in between these two sides, I'm going to go prone. Okay, so we'll move sand free, forward and down. I'm going to move my block forward. I'm going to pivot my bolster vertical to the front. I'm going to lie on my bolster and bring my forehead down. And feel my elbows on the floor. And you might feel your forehead touch. But give your back the opportunity to completely even out and release. Hands slide back. Up dog, lift up the chest, stretch the waist. Feel the strength in the spine. And then we move back to table and we find our next pose, either pigeon on the right side or into sleeping sage. So my right knee would go forward, my left thigh stretches back, and pigeon. I choose the bolster support I like. Those that are going to go in towards that sleeping sage pose are going to turn the bolster forward and place the blanket on top, maybe, maybe not, and lower your body rib weight into the bolster. You can find that this is similar to the pigeon pose, right? It's a similar stretching across the back layer of the buttock into the glutes. It's kind of interesting, right? So if that's a difficult one for you, you might work with this one. And it's very simple. I lean into my bolster. I turn my head to where it's comfortable. Okay? And let the weight of the chest lean down. Yeah, feel the spinal twist in this pose. Now, if you're in pigeon pose, you might keep the twist by moving your left elbow to the bolster or the floor and turning to your right. All right, you could be here, turning to the right. It's pretty intense in my hip this way. And it creates a thoracic rotation, right? So my lumbars are well channeled in this pose. They're well traveled by now today. We're well traveled in the hip channel, the lumbar channel in this one. Okay, now switch around into that side sage. So we're going to move our right leg on the bolster, on the blanket, and then place the bolster next to the thigh and block, blankie, arm thread through, and that support. Okay, if your knee ain't taking any of that, you can put something on the inside. If you have a grippy ball, you can use that as well. Or the smush ball, I like to call it, smush ball. And feel that left arm reach. Yeah, go with the side full length. Yeah, something different than it lives in. It usually crunches forwards. Your arm could be on your bolster. You might let it rest onto your side. So as we move kind of full circle in this practice, we're really moving to arriving at some peaceful positioning for our organs. So feel how they organize. Take a few more moments with the side reach. Give it all you've got for the support dynamic of your props. Yeah, half of this is finding the props, towels, blankets, bolsters, cushions, so that you prop up your bones to regulate breathing, to stimulate breathing, and to create space between things in the body. So as that left arm finds ease, we're going to move any sand aside, and we're going to find our way to a final pose, which could be legs up the wall, or if you would prefer to stack up your blankets and your bolster on top of your blocks in front of you and make a bolster bench, you can do that as well, right? You can stack up things and put your legs on top of that. Okay, I will show legs up the wall. So we're going to place our bolster at the base of a wall so that you can get the legs vertical. Yeah, keep it really simple here for your design of alignment. It's just a simple vertical position. Okay, so I have a bolster, a blanket, and a sandbag. And if you have an eye pillow or a towel to put over your eyes, that is quite welcome for your brain focus, your mental landscape. So I'll sit with my body on the side of the bolster, so I'm right on the edge of the bolster. And I'm trying to get my sitting bones to the wall. So I'm actually leaning into my thigh. So when I get in towards this fetal position, I'm going to lower down my shoulder and try to roll, do a roll to bring the legs up. So feel where you can get the legs to manage that reverse circulation to the belly and the heart. If you have sand, place it on the bottoms of your feet. Feel the feet push the sand to balance, or balancing the strength in your knees. The sand is great for that. Strengthening the around the knees, the muscles around. It's going to strengthen the upper thighs, It certainly is a way to get that blood flow to reverse back towards the heart and the brain, right? So that's a focus in this position, that reversing the gravitational pull. Resting your arms in a cactus shape or straight back behind you. If you have something to put over your eyes, you might place it now. This is quite helpful to calm the nervous system. So creating that curtain of darkness, whether it's your eyes closing or an eye pillow with a little weight or an actual towel at the forehead and across the bridge of the nose. So you have that curtain of darkness to calm the brain. Okay. And get that feel of the position of the breathing muscles, the diaphragm, one of them. So you could have your hands on the belly or overhead and feeling that excursion of the diaphragm as you inhale. The energy of that muscle is moving upstream, right? It's going opposite it does during its standing position. So it strengthens the core. And as you exhale, it naturally moves back towards the space at the base of the heart. Let's structure this just for another minute, simply giving yourself the opportunity and the time for that drainage of the fluid in the legs. That's a natural human bipedal experience, that there is retention in the legs and some circulation challenges in our knees from that position, have habits of posture. So feel a little bend of your knees, and then eventually let your exhale lengthen. From exhalation comes relaxation. Processing and absorbing your practice. Now feeling the flexing of your feet. Feel the mixture of flexing your feet, extending in your calves. And bend your knees, so you'll lower your knees down towards your ribs and move the sand off, either via hands or drop off. Feet together, knees out. Try to let the legs do their own stretching without an influence of your hands right away. See if your legs can slide down. Took a while to get there. Sometimes we end up with a little more time to get out. And then as your body rolls to the side, you might want to sit right up at the wall with your spine feeling tall, or sitting next to the wall on a little bit of height, which makes it easier on your lower back, right? So the height under my hips makes it easier on my back because the knees tend to flow up and that can tighten my back. So find a simple cross-legged position, and let's reach our hands and feel the palms together. Feel the support of others that are in the presence of your practice, feeling that energy. And breathing in support. Inhale slow. Exhale, bowing in behind the heart. In gratitude, namaste. Thank you.